Hello, my name is Cher Grieving, and this is my case study for EDL 851. The name of the case study is Good Teacher Turns Bad. And just a brief summary, we're talking about a teacher who has taught for many years, who is enduring some stressful situations at home, in which she carries into her classroom at school. First of all, the problem identification and analysis category 1, what do I know? These are the things that I know is happening in this case study. We're talking about the school of Crestview Elementary. It is a rural school, one out of 3 elementary schools in this district, who has good attendance, high test scores, and very happy parents to date. The principal is Jean Wilson. She was previously a teacher for 13 years. She is a veteran faculty member, and she has a veteran faculty under which she now supervises as a principal. She is taking words of advice from a former administrator who said to be careful not to rock the boat. Do not come in as a first-year administrator and make a lot of changes. She's currently in her 3rd year as an administrator. We're talking about the first grade teacher, Mrs. Horton, who is also a seasoned professional, very well liked teacher, very well respected, as she has earned the Teacher of the Year award. But however, she has some problems at home that is causing her stress. At school, she is becoming easily upset. She is beginning to argue with her colleagues, and she has been reported of yelling and verbally abusing the students. The parent in this case is Mr. Stafford. He is upset with the first grade teacher, Mrs. Horton. He is requesting that his daughter be taken out of her classroom, and he schedules a visit with the school. What do I need to know at this point? I feel like I need to know how to deal with Mrs. Horton. In the case study, it mentions that she was not on board with a reading series they were wanting to implement at the beginning of the school year. She argued with her colleagues, and when the principal called her in to visit with her, she did not change her mind. She still wanted to continue to argue. And so as a principal, I feel like I need to really do some searching to figure out how to approach Mrs. Horton, what may calm her, what may motivate her. I need to be in the same corner as her. We need to start working together. And as a principal, I need to make sure I've documented what I have observed in her classroom. We know that this situation started after spring break of the previous school year. The principal thought that things would become better over the summer, and at the beginning of the new school year, things were not better. And if I were the administrator in this case, I want to have some documentation of what I've observed when these parent complaints start rolling in. So that's my 3rd bullet point, the documentation of previous behaviors, what her past evaluations have looked like. And then I also better be looking down the road at the policy for tenured teachers. Do we need to possibly consider having Mrs. Horton take some administrative leave to clear her mind, get the issues at home under control before she comes back to school? And if situation doesn't get better, do we need to look at dismissal? So am I going to identify the problem? I'm going to become the administrator in the situation right now. Near the end of the school year, Mrs. Horton became upset, argues with her colleagues. Parents are beginning to write letters at the beginning of the new school year saying that she is verbally abusing the kids and singling them out. It is reported that Mrs. Horton's husband has left her. He's moved out of the home, and she is now raising 2 teenage boys on her own. She is under much stress. The summer seemed quiet, but things did not get better at the beginning of the new school year. And now, as the administrator, I'm receiving several phone calls and notes expressing their concern from parents, one being Mr. Stafford, who wants to have a visit with Mrs. Horton and myself at school. Mrs. Horton agrees. We meet, and the meeting does not go well. She ends up becoming the case study documents that she becomes very red in the face and slams her hand on the desk and accuses the parent of spreading lies. So what are the steps that I'm going to take to resolve this problem? First of all, immediate action. It's not going to go away. I can't just ignore it and hope that it fixes itself. I need to visit with Miss Horton, and I need to go back to how to approach her, what strategies are going to work with her. I need to first put it down, bluntly, that her actions at school are not acceptable, and possibly between her and I we can determine her needs and maybe set some goals for herself and her students, that things to work towards improvement. I also need to probably look at some additional support. The fact that if she doesn't want to visit with me as much, does she have colleagues or other staff members that she would visit with? Does she trust anyone in the school that she can maybe be open and honest with? Possibly we need to suggest some professional counseling. Again, that's on a personal level, and that's something that I wouldn't want to be directly involved with, but I would gratefully support that idea if that comes up in conversation. I need to have these follow-up conversations since parents have been communicating with me. I need to make sure I'm communicating with them, and again, not just ignoring the situation, and making the parents feel like their opinions don't count or don't matter. Maybe I need to have an additional meeting or phone call with Mr. Stafford, since he was the parent who came to the school to express his concern. And then I need to make sure I'm having weekly checks with Mrs. Horton. I need to check on her progress. Need to monitor closely the parent communications that are coming in. I need to make sure the Board of Education is fully aware of the situation and what is going on, and the correspondence that I've had between parents and other teachers and Mrs. Horton. And I guess while I'm communicating with the Board of Education, we will talk about, if no progress is made by Mrs. Horton, what are our next steps. So my strategies to implement my plan: again, communicate. Make sure that I'm communicating with appropriate staff members and faculty. I underlined appropriate here because I feel like not everyone needs to know what's going on with Mrs. Horton. We are on a need-to-know educational basis. Maybe there are staff members at the other end of the building isn't ever directly involved with Mrs. Horton or her students. They probably don't need to know. I'm certainly not going to start spreading stories about her. I need to make sure I'm communicating with the Board of Education. I want to provide as much additional support as I can for Mrs. Horton. I feel like my support can be in the form of just being visible, being ready to listen, and being visible for not only her, but for the students. I need to really start monitoring her classroom closely. Making sure that she knows I'm supporting her. I'm not micromanaging her. I need to really work to establish a relationship of trust with her. She must understand that we're working for her best interest, and in conversation with her, when we establish her needs and her goals and the plan of action as to how she's going to improve by leaving that stress at home and not bringing it to school, she needs to trust me in those conversations. I also need to make sure I'm practicing confidentiality. Stop the rumors. Discourage gossiping. Mrs. Horton must realize we're all on her side. We're concerned, and we're not judging. Category 3, what is best for the students when working to resolve this problem? As an administrator, I must be visible and available. Feel that is very important, that they see me, they know I'm there, they know I'm concerned, they know I'm watching. I must provide support and encouragement for Mrs. Horton, and if there are more signs of inappropriate behavior, I must react immediately, and I must communicate with the parents when only necessary, just to lessen or halt the rumors. Category 4, what am I thinking, feeling, and valuing? I am thinking about the stress that she is enduring with her problems at home, and I'm feeling bad for her, and I know how hard it is to separate home and work. I'm thinking about that and some strategies I can give to her. I'm thinking about the frustration of the parents who are on the other side of the fence. They know she shouldn't bring that to school and that their students should not feel the blunt of her frustration. I'm valuing the students and their feelings at my school, and I'm thinking about how my school will regain trust from all this that has happened. We have upset parents, and how are we going to get their trust back? And then I'm thinking about the necessary steps that may have to be taken. I certainly don't want anyone to think I'm ignoring this situation and that it'll fix itself, but we need to work to progress. We need to work towards a goal and make sure it's not happening or doesn't happen again. What issues in Category 4 are still unresolved or open to further discussion? First of all, I'm thinking and wondering, will Mrs. Horton agree to the new reading program? We're working on her actions in the classroom and not bringing that stress with her, but she's already said, I'm not doing that new reading program. Can we get her to do it? Can we bring her on board? Should Julie be removed from the classroom? Mr. Stafford is probably still going to be adamant about his daughter being removed from the classroom. He may not trust that we're working to resolve the issue. And if he doesn't, do we go ahead and remove Julie just to make sure we're easing the tension in everyone's mind there? Should there be a follow-up meeting between Mr. Stafford and Mrs. Horton? Maybe this needs to happen to patch up the relationship, and then Julie can remain in the classroom. Or is there a timeline for Mrs. Horton? When should we expect her to be better? When should we expect her to not carry that stress into the classroom and to start teaching like she was before? Category 5, Component 1, how do I feel like I promoted academic success for my students? I will always put the students' needs first. If I feel like it's best for the students, that's the action that I will take. And I will see that they are in a safe environment conducive for learning. Student needs, safe environment, enhanced learning. That's what we're all about. That's why we're there. And if I have a teacher that's not on board with that, then we need to look at going separate directions. Component 2, how do I promote personal well-being for my students? I will work to patch relationships. We have relationships that need to be patched between Mrs. Horton and parents. I will practice confidentiality, and I will work to stop the rumors as we work through this together. Obviously, she's going to feel like her reputation has been damaged, and I will work with her to repair that. And then finally, Component 3, how did I enhance instructional capacity? I will work to repair and build relationships between staff and faculty, teachers and students, school and community members. I will work hard to put the pieces back together to build trust within our school so that learning can go on and take place. That's it. That's my case study. Thank you for listening.